Welcome to ESSMaker. This site helps you make a schedule for your elementary school. And the purpose of this video is to give you instruction in all of the tools that this brings to bear upon the scheduling process. It's divided into chapters, and there will be a table of contents so that you should be able to use the video as a reference guide to answer specific questions at some point in the future. The first chapter, though, is a quick tour, hitting the highlights that should orient you to how the software works. Before we get into that, I want to point out some features that bring benefit to the scheduling process. And the first is that there is a setup process that collects the relevant information from you regarding your school. It really configures the software to the way your school must operate. If this is the first time you're making a schedule, that setup process will show you the ideas and the facts that are relevant to the schedule making process. But even if this is not your first schedule, this setup process allows the software to validate your schedule, to make sure that there's nothing left out, that there's nothing that's overlapped, that there's nothing that's been duplicated. Once that setup process is complete, then you move to the planning pages, and the advantage here is that the software represents the classes in a visual way. Each class, each session, has a height that matches the length of time that the session lasts. And so you can see how it represents visually how things interact in time. You're not left with a list of numbers that are times. You're not left with blocks that are the same size but are actually representing different amounts of time. And it also makes these blocks easy to move around. You can drag and drop them from one day to another, or move them up and down in the same day, even just in 1 minute bumps up and down. Also, once that process is complete and you've made your schedule, then there is a reporting process that generates PDF files, which you can email or print or publish in some way. And you can get as many as you want of the various kinds of schedules. You just turn them on, and whatever you ask for is what you get. It can make a color schedule or a black and white schedule. The master schedule is what we were just looking at, the schedule for the school. But the advantage of having the data broken up in the software is that it can pull that schedule apart and make individual schedules for grade levels or sections or the specialists automatically. And that removes an error-prone and tedious process. So that's really the overview that I wanted to show you of the features. Let's look at another question, and that would be, I want you to understand that there are three kinds of schedules that ScheduleMaker is able to make for you, and most of you will be using the traditional master schedule. That's the kind of schedule I just showed you, where there's a flexibility of the block sizes, and you're making it different, and the days can be different each throughout the week. And this is the one that has most of the features. And when you start ScheduleMaker, it's that ESSMaker making a schedule. That's the kind of schedule that you'll be automatically producing. There is a second kind, and that's a classroom-only schedule, which is just a subset of the master. This is for a classroom teacher who is not making a school-wide schedule. Everything that is in that classroom-only schedule is also contained within the master schedule. And so if you're making a master schedule, there's no need for you to make that kind. But there is a second kind of what's called rotating specials area master. And this is a schedule in which really it's the same every day. So let me show you an example of that just to point at this. So with this kind of rotating specials schedule, the master schedule is really just for each grade or each rotation group. And so, for example, this grade 4 will go to their special areas at 9 o'clock every day, but which special area they go to, which topic on any particular day, will rotate through some pattern. And so this is in some ways a simpler kind of schedule to make, but it's also stricter in other ways. And so if you're used to making this kind of schedule for your school, the software can accommodate you. So some of you may do that rotating specials area master schedule. The thing to bear in mind is, even if you make that kind of schedule for your school, if you want more features and less strictness so that you can do some different things in around that rotation, you can still make that kind of schedule with a traditional master approach. And so you can try either out and see which works best for you. So let's go then on to that quick overview of the various pieces and pages and tools that are provided by this traditional master schedule software. That's the part we'll be looking at here. The Schedules tab provides you the ability to select which schedule you want to work on. You can have more than one schedule working in this process. It can make sense to make a duplicate of your schedule as you're working, or various other things. The key thing to understand on this page at this moment is that only one schedule can be active at any one time, and you press the Activate button to choose that schedule to work on. And you can see here this little finger is pointing over with the hand. It's pointing at this schedule, and that's the one we would work on all the other pages. Let's go ahead then and go to Setup, and I'll show you what's happening with that schedule. In the setup process, we have these 4 tabs that are the various setup areas. And the first tab is a school settings tab, and it gives you the ability to give a name to this schedule and set how many sections or classes you have at each of those grade levels. And in this case, they're all set to 4. And that's a fairly basic concept, and you should be able to answer that quickly. There is on this page as well some settings for cafeteria and lunch and those things, and we'll talk about lunches later in more details, the very options. There are more than one way to do lunch in this software. Also, you set here a school day. What's the start and end time, and how many days do you want in that schedule? Is it 5 or is it some other number here? So that's the school setup, but the special areas tab in the setup process is perhaps the most important tab in the setup, and it's a little complex. There's a lot going on this page. Each of these lines obviously is one of your special areas, or encore classes as some schools call them. These are topics or subject areas which are being offered as services to students. And so we put in here by default music, phys ed, art, and library. You can add to this list or change any of these. There's a title and a code and a number of instructors in that topic. And so these left 3 columns determine how many columns are on the master schedule. So each of these instructors needs 1 column for every day on your master schedule, and that's the way to think about these 3 columns. How big does the master schedule need to be? What are the subject areas? How many columns do I want in each one? And so that will help you understand that part. The right 3 columns determine how much of that topic a particular student receives. How many blocks do we need of scheduled class sessions to be put onto that schedule? And so, for example, this first row is set 2 sessions per week for music of 30 minutes each. And so this right-hand column determines blocks, how many go on the schedule. And in the rightmost column says create 1 block for each section. That's its current setting. What that would mean is that each of the classes at all the grades would get 2 blocks, and they would get blocks per section. Now, you can drop this down and change it to grade instead, and in that case, the system would create 1 block for the entire grade. Now, that wouldn't probably make sense to send all of 2nd grade to your music teacher at once, but it could make sense if you were treating this special as a recess, and you put recess here as one of your specials. You might send a whole grade level to recess at once. So it's something you can use, probably not most of the time, but occasionally you would ask for a block per grade. Now, you may have noticed as we're talking through this that we're setting values for these settings for the whole school. Sessions per week, number of minutes, and whatever, for the whole school. Well, what if it's different between grade levels? Well, that's what the grade level details allows you to do. You can come on this page and change things. So for example, let's say your kindergartners have shorter sessions. You could change that to 20 minutes or whatever and get different values different sized blocks for the kindergartners. Or perhaps you have a topic, a subject area that only the upper grades receive. Then you can simply zero out the sessions for the lower grades in that column and get what you want in that way. The other thing to notice on this page is that at the rightmost end is a lunch section that lets you change what kind of blocks are created for lunch. And so, for example, obviously mostly that's going to be the same throughout the school, probably not changed, but you might have a half-day kindergartner where the kindergartners don't eat at school, and you could turn off their blocks by just clicking none there. Now the final tab for setup is the teachers tab, and here you'll have just a list of all the teachers, and to start with we'll see the special area teachers, and there's a code and a place for you to put the name for the teacher there. This is partly filled out already, so some of this has been entered before. The idea of these codes is that the code is what's going to appear on the blocks, and so they act as a mnemonic, a visual representation for you as you're making the schedule. Oh, that's the music block, or down here it puts in codes automatically for you for the classroom teachers. The way that it labels them is it puts the grade, like 1, 2, 3, 1 for first grade, but then counts up alphabetically, A, B, C, D, depending on how many sections you have. And so this is the code that it puts in automatically. You are free to change that to whatever you want it to be. I would suggest that you keep these codes short. 3 or 4 characters is about the top. If you make it 5 or 6, the code will probably be too long and run into neighboring blocks and you get confusion there. So anyway, there are names and codes for the special areas, for the teachers, and I'll go scroll down to the bottom. And down here is a section where you can add more teachers or staff if you want to make individual schedules for other kinds of people in your building besides the specialists and the classroom teachers, and you can add those here. There is one other thing about this page I want to point out, and that is that all of these times that are here, this page is mostly about teacher availability times. And so with classroom teachers, obviously they're most likely they're going to be in your building all day, every day, but many schools need to share their specialists with some other school, and so there are times or days in which those specialists might not be in your building. And so in that case, what you can do is you can change these times or blank out the times to say they're not even in the building, and the software then can help check behind you to make sure that you're not putting blocks on assigning blocks of teaching times to those teachers when they're not in your building. Well, that's essentially all of the setup pages, and I know there's a lot of information there, but it should be pretty clear to you. Let's go to the planning page and show you what happens there. Here as well, we have a lot of tools and some navigation to some other pages, but this is the master schedule, and you can see in this traditional schedule that there is a section for each day, Monday through Friday. And then in each day, there's the special areas designated here at the top. And then time is running down the side here, 9, 10, 11, 12 in the morning. This schedule we've started, it has the second graders on there, and you can see their blocks in place. Down here, we see these gray lunches, 12 to 12:30. Those are the lunches for the specialists. And so you can move those around. You're not stuck with either the size or whatever, but they're just put on here by default partly to prompt you and partly to help you, save you a little bit of effort. These lunches over here on the left are this daily lunch schedule. Those are the lunches for the students. And again, the software automatically staggers them at 4-minute intervals. You're not stuck with that. You can move those around as whatever fits your case and what fits in your school and your plans for lunch. We'll talk about lunch more later. Let's talk about these options for tools, and really the key tool that you need to notice is you're going to land on this with the special areas button highlighted, and that gives you these other buttons for each of the grades. And so let me click on the grade 1 special areas, and what pops up here is a ribbon against the top of the window, and you can see the red blocks up here for the first grade specials. So the goal is that those blocks were configured by the setup process, and they need to make it onto the schedule where they need to go, and wherever that might be. And there are 3 ways to get them there. And one way is to drag and drop them. You can just take your mouse and click on it and drag it down and put it where it needs to go. And the reason that this is a ribbon and it is stuck to the top of the window is so that for dragging and dropping, you can scroll your calendar down close to those blocks, and so the dragging and dropping can be very short, and it's more convenient that way. There's another option though. Dragging and dropping is one thing. Another way though is to use this form that's down here, and you can see that you can pick a section and a special area and use this form to place blocks onto the calendar. And so in this case, this is saying 1A music has 2 blocks that are not assigned yet, and so you could say I want to put it on a Monday and Wednesday and put in a time, hit this place specials button, and the software will move those right into place for you. There's a third option, a third way, and I'll close that just to get it out of the way. There's a third way to get the blocks onto the calendar, and that's to use this autofill feature. And so in this case, it autofills 1 grade at a time. So we could pick the first grade and push the button do autofill, and that will bring all those 2nd grade classes and put them on the calendar at once. And it has some heuristics that it follows to try to make a good schedule. It tries to get common planning if it can. It will try to put them on the schedule as early as it can given whatever's already there, and it'll try to spread them out across the week rather than stack them all into one day. Now, depending on your schedule and where it stands and your dynamics, your schedule may not look like this one in terms of how many specials you have and all of that. But this autofill may work very well for you, or it may give you something that's not all that great. Even in that case, it will get the blocks onto the calendar approximately where they might need to be, and then you can drag and drop them around over shorter distances to get them neatened up to match what you want to get. So those are really the key things in this area that you should grasp about the tools that are here. These 3 blocks in the middle, create block, edit block, and delete block, allows you to create custom blocks that are in addition to those setup blocks, and you can do anything you want with these, whatever that matches your desire or need or your wish to use the software. Now, what is it good for? Some examples would be something like a 5th grade chorus, or maybe specialist planning periods. We didn't put on here planning periods for them, and so that's one option you could put here if you wish. But a 5th grade chorus, for example, is a single block. You have to put it in the music teacher's column somewhere in the week, and so you just fill it out. You say, 5th grade and start time and the title, and pick the special area person and the time, and create the block. And then those blocks allow you to edit them. So you make the block, and let's say you want to change something about it, you can click on it and edit it, or you can also delete those blocks and just take them away altogether. So that's what these 3 buttons do. There's a tool here that maybe just help you do things more quickly in certain ways. So you can shift times by picking a block of times, and so in this case it's asking you to put in a start time and an end time. And so if we wanted to move all of these lunches for the specialists from 12:30 from 12 up to 11:30, say, we could say start at 12, go to 12:30, and pick up all the blocks in that time window throughout the week, and move them up 30 minutes earlier, and click apply shift, and it would just automatically do that. Obviously you can do that by hand with each one, but this is a way to do that sort of thing more quickly. Or for example, let's suppose you make your entire schedule and then decide, well, really I need it to be the whole thing to be 15 minutes earlier. Well, you can select the whole business, and this will move it around for you. There's also a similar kind of moving things set of features here, in which you can switch days or grades or sections. And so if you get the schedule going and maybe you're done, or maybe you're not even quite done, and you decide, well, I want Monday and Thursday to switch, then you can just say Monday and Thursday and hit the switch button, and it'll take those 2 days and the blocks and exchange them. So, and there's also a start over button, in some case, and you can hit the start over button safely, this one up here anyway. What this will do is remove all the blocks from the schedule, all the setup blocks. Custom blocks won't be touched by that, so when you hit this start over button, the red one, that will act and it will take everything away, and you might want to do that at some point. So these are the main tools for making the master schedule, but I want you to notice that up here we have some buttons for core for each grade and then a teacher's button. So let me click on a core schedule, grade 2, and this schedule then is not the master schedule, but it's the schedule for the second grade, in which you can put on other things for that second grade, things like English language arts or science or math or social studies or whatever else you want to do on this page. Maybe you're not interested in going to that detail. There are lots of things you can do here. This is one option for doing recess, is to come in here and put a recess block after all of these lunches, if that's, for example, the way you do lunch, recess. So anyway, there are tools here just like the other things where you can create, edit, and delete blocks that go on this schedule, and so this can be helpful in that way. And there's one of these for every one of the grade levels. There, at the right-hand end, there's a teacher's button, and this brings us to a list of all the teachers in the school. So you have the special area teachers, and then you have each grade level teacher with each section. And so let me click on 2A, for example. And I want to describe what's here and why you would use these schedules. So this schedule for the second grade teacher is, you can see all this gray, which represents when she's supposed to be in the building. That's your school day. And so the gray areas represent times when, as far as we know, that teacher is responsible for their class. And the pink areas are the areas where, based on what's been entered in the system so far, are areas where that class is either at a special or at lunch. And so ostensibly that second grade teacher would be free from responsibilities for their students at those pink times. And so you could use this schedule to actually put in their planning times, or maybe some duty times you have for them. Maybe they have some kind of bus duty or some kind of recess, or whatever it is that would be in addition to their classroom or their planning. And so this is the kind of use you can put to these kinds of schedules for whatever that is valuable to you in your school. And obviously, if you made teachers in addition to the classroom teachers, they would wind up here at the end, and you can make whatever you want to do. You can put whatever kind of blocks on here that suit your purposes. So that's the planning pages. And so once that part is complete, or even in the interim, if you need to do things in the meantime, there's a report page, and there is a validation process as well. You can get full details there where it is checked to see that everything looks good, or that you have some issues as far as it can tell. But the report process here is, and you can hit the toggle button to turn on the checkboxes quickly for what you want, and you can pick color or not. But there's a master schedule and the lunch schedule and grade level schedules and sections or special areas or those teacher schedules. You click the ones you want and then get report, and it will put all of those in the same PDF. If you need separate PDFs, you can click just a few things and click get report separately. I will point out to you that the grade level report has not only just the blocks, the block view of that grade level, but it has a second report that is a time report that lists out the number of minutes that each section spends in each subject area, and that report could be useful in presenting to stakeholders to demonstrate that you're meeting the standards you have for the number of minutes of instruction in each various topics, and so that may save you some effort. So finally, we have the user profile tab, and this is just sort of an administrative tab, if you will. Here you can change your email address, which you use to log in, or you can change your password. And there is also the notice of payments due, or your premium level. At this point, it will just tell you when your next level is due to be paid. Once you get within about 30 days of that date, then a button will appear there that will allow you to pay for the next year. This software is not a subscription system that automatically charges you money. We want you to be happy with the software and show that by making your choice each year to say, yes, I want to keep going. There is a section down here at the bottom of this user profile that you may find helpful. It allows you to change the nomenclature that the software uses for some keywords in the scheduling process. So for example, the software calls the master schedule a master schedule. And if you have some other name for that, you just type in the word you want there, and then the software should use your word instead of master schedule. Or similarly for section, it uses the word section where you may be saying class or classroom or something else. You can put that here. Or for that matter, special areas. Some schools, as I said earlier, call them encore classes. So put in here what your school uses and hit save, and the software should make it easier to understand for your school. So that is our quick overview of hitting the highlights of each of the pieces of tool sets that this ESSMaker provides for making a schedule for your elementary school. We do trust that it'll be a great help to you and that you'll find it beneficial. Okay, let me show you some tips for moving blocks around and handle some common questions about how to handle lunch and recess. So we'll go back to our basic schedule we've been working with, and let's look at the planning page to start with, and let me show you how to move some blocks around, and in the sense of dragging and dropping them with the mouse pointer. So to move a block, you would click on it with the mouse and then drag it to where you want it to go. And so this is a library right here. I could move that one around, but actually let me do this. Let me open up another tab so that we can see this. We'll pull in and out of the ribbon as well, and we'll practice that. So here's a 1D library. If you click on the block in a good place, then when you bring it onto the schedule and it's over a place where you can drop it, you can see the numbers, which are the time that it's going to start, and that might be helpful to you. So either at the top or the bottom. And you'll notice as I drag it across here that when I'm over a library column, then it turns gray, and that's where I can drop it. I can't drop, so let me do that. I'll drop it here on Monday at 10:03, and so that's where it goes. And the thing to notice about this is that the hotspot for the block is at the top in the center, and so I'll grab this one at the bottom this time. So as the center passes out of that column, then it won't go anywhere, but once you're inside the top, you're good. And you don't have to worry about dropping it exactly in the middle. Just anywhere, as long as you're over the place, you'll go. If I try to drop that outside of where it's allowed, it'll just go back. So if I try to drop it in music, it'll go back to the library. Or if I come up here and I try to drop it above the start of the school day, that's no good either. And but I can do this. Now, one other thing I'll point out is if I got it at 10:03, and depending on your dexterity, you might say, well, I really wanted it to be at 10 o'clock even. One way to fix that is to click on it, and that will put this border around there, and then you can use the up and down arrow keys to move it 1 minute at a time. So there are 3 clicks, puts it at 10 a.m. Now, let's suppose you want to put it back in the ribbon, I can click it and put it back up there, and as long as the top of the block is within the ribbon, it'll stay, so I can do that. It puts it back in. Now, if I'm going to put it, let me try that again and do it the wrong way. If it's here and I want to put it back in the ribbon and I move it up there and, oops, I'm a little overboard, and I put the top above the top of the ribbon, then it says I can't do that. The hotspot is that top center part of the block. So so that's, I think maybe that's the basics of drag and drop, just some clues to help you go a little more easily on that. What I want to, since this is about lunch and recess, let me close the ribbon. We'll come down here and look at lunch and recess, or lunch anyway. lunch can be done a couple different ways, but these are our lunch blocks for our students. And you can move and drag and drop these around in just that same way as those classes. And the point being here is that they need to stay within this window that we've set for lunch. We've said lunch needs to go from 11 to 1 in this school, and so there's this green box that you have to keep lunch inside of. And so you can drag these around, and they're automatically put here in this staggered way, but maybe your school does that differently, and they all come in at the same time. There, that's one below. Let me click this and put this up there. So so you can do this sort of thing as well. Now, again, the same rules here apply. If you try to drag it and put it above, it won't let you do that. But if you need to, you can bring it down here to get out of your way, and it'll let you do that so that the bottom is sort of hanging off while you're moving things around. You can put it where it goes later. The validator will warn you about this, that you've put lunch outside of the time of where it's allowed, because this is hanging out past 1 o'clock. But anyway, let's put that one up there. And so let's talk then a little bit more details about lunch and recess and some options here. So some of the strategies for doing lunch and recess are similar, and so we'll just talk about them together in this way. This lunch functionality is not the only way to do lunch. But I think it's helpful, and most of you will probably find it's fine. One of the constraints of doing your lunch schedule with this tool is that it requires that lunch be the same every day of the week. And for most of your schools, that's fine. We do have some schools that need to use our software where one day of the week lunch is different because the schedule is different on that day. And I'll show you, we'll talk about how to do that. If you're going to do that kind of thing, or you need lunch to be different than what this provides you, then what you do is you opt out of this lunch functionality, and I'll show you how to turn that off, and then you come in and you'll do lunch in some other way. But and those other ways are similar to how we would do recess. Now, so let's talk about recess. Some schools just make their lunch period long enough to be the eating part and the going outside to recess part, and they just manage that within each classroom. Teacher just knows what they're doing as to when they're doing it, whether they're doing lunch first or recess first. And that's a possibility. You can do that if that's what suits your school. But another option would be to have this be your lunch, but then to go into the core schedules and put recess there. And so, for example, let me pick first grade, core 1, and you can see here that here are those lunches, and they're staggered in this way. And the staggering, again, is just so that these people who come in later don't have to stand in line so long, with the concept that 4 minutes between classes entering that cafeteria makes for the best use of the time. Anyway, so let's suppose we're going to put recess here after lunch. Well, you can come here and you can say, well, lunch is there. I can just put recess right after it here. And so let's try that. I'll show you. So for example, 1A, let's put a block for 1A, and let's call it recess, and I'll put just REC. The start time for that is going to be 11:46, because that's when they come out of lunch, 46. And the lunch period, I don't know, this lunch period is 30 minutes. Let's say the recess period is 15 minutes. Maybe it's 20. Maybe it's some other number, but let's just try that for here. And then, so what day? Well, we're going to do all the days of the week, because that's the way it is. And we can leave it as gray. Well, you can pick a color, is whatever color you want to use. So if I create the blocks, then that puts those 15-minute recesses right there. And obviously, because they're 15 minutes, they're very short, so there's not room to write much on those blocks, but that's your recess. And you could just go through then and pick 1B and others, and just finish out the rest in that manner. Now, just to show you another option here, though, let's go back to the master schedule. And similar approach in that we have these, but let's try kindergarten this time. Notice I put them all at once, and just so you can see what that might look like. So let's go to core K and do theirs in that same way, but in this case, since they're straight across, there is another option in that I could do lunch instead of by section, I could say the whole kindergarten goes to recess at once. And so that would look like this. And again, I don't know, let's do 20 minutes this time. And 20 minutes is the shortest block where you can see the time on it. There's enough room there for that. And let's have this start at 11:30, and again do each day. And what we're doing here is clicking on each day, and then, but because this is a grade block as opposed to a section block, it'll cover the whole grade level. And so if I do that, then it comes across here like this. And so those are two options for the kinds of blocks that you can make. This is the same basic pattern we were doing before, but this is one way to do recess, to come to the core section schedules, put them right after lunch or wherever they need to go, and that's your recess. Well, that's not the only way it can be done, because maybe there's something else going on with your recess. Maybe it's not attached to your lunch, maybe there's some other issues, and you might like to have your recesses just be another set of columns here along with the specials, and so we would treat recess as a special. Let me go ahead and see if we can make that happen. By going back to setup, we need to add some more columns here. So in the setup section, we want a new special area, and we're going to call it recess. Now, you know, recess might not really be in your mind like a special area, but it doesn't matter. We have a lot of rows here. We can do whatever we want to put on that master schedule. So let's put this in, and now we may, if you followed through the setup process, you'll remember not the setup, the introductory process of the video, which showed you how all this works. The number of instructors gives us how many columns we're going to have for every day. And so you could put 1 here or 2 or whatever. It's just however many columns you want to have those recess blocks show up in. And so I don't know, let's put 2 just to show you what that looks like. And then, but sessions per week, we are going to want 5 sessions per week, and we're going to make them, let's make them 20 minutes, and let's do it by section. Well, we could, or we could do it by grade. Let's try that. It'll be fewer blocks, and we can see what that looks like. So this will say, let's make some extra columns, 2 extra columns, and we'll have some recess blocks to put on the schedule. So we'll save next, and everything's the same for all the grades. So that's all we need to do. Let's go to planning, and so now we have these extra columns, 2 recess columns for handling and scheduling those recess blocks for this school. And the first thing you'll notice is maybe I'll say a hassle, is that the system assumes that if you have a specialist, that specialist needs lunch. Well, in this case, these 2 columns are really, they're fake specials, and there's not, as far as we know, there's not a specialist there who's handling those, or not even 2 specialists. So what you should do is delete these lunches that it put in for us automatically. Let's try that, and that would be good just to see how you do that. So you say delete block, and I want to delete this one. And so you hit the delete block, and we'll do that. And we'll just get all these out of the way. At this point, you have to do each one at a time. We're thinking about how to make that easier to select more than one at a time, but that's not available yet. So let's get rid of, so I'm clicking on a block that I want to delete of these special custom blocks, and I'm using the delete block form to say get rid of that one. And so you can see up here the form, when I've clicked on it, it says this is the recess at 12 o'clock on Friday. And so let me make that one go away, and the last one. So now we have these things here, now, but we need to put where are the blocks? Well, they're in the special areas section, and so I don't know, let's start with kindergarten. And we can see here that over here at the end is our 5 recess blocks for those kindergartners. So let me just, we'll drag a few down. In fact, what I can do is put them down here, and obviously we have to decide where they go, and I'm not sure, but you know, the point is I'll put some of them in here. So do 1 there and 1 here, and at the same time And we could do other days. Let me do this though. Let me go get another grade level. Let me put in a grade 1. And we'll say grade 1 goes at the same time, say. I don't know. Actually, though, that their lunches is at this point. So let me come bring it down further. Even put it here. Now, you can see where I'm doing. You can do whatever you want in terms of overlapping or whatever suits you in terms of how you put these blocks. If they're overlapping, that's fine. It may warn you about that, but if you know what you're doing, that's fine. What this would specify is how many people can go to recess at once. And in this case, since we made 2 columns, maybe you're saying, well, I can put 2 grades worth of people out. And that seems like a lot, but I don't know, whatever suits your school. Maybe you're doing it by section instead. But so the advantage of doing it like this is that you can see all in one place what's happening across the whole school for recess. All the grades are going to have their recesses here together, and you can see where they are and not have too much happening at once. And so this is an advantage of doing it here as opposed to on the core schedule. So that's basically how you should do recess, one of these with these 2 ways. Now lunches are a similar question now. So with lunch, the standard way is to use this green box over here, but if you need lunch to be different some days of the week, then you should turn off this green box and make columns that are specials, like these recess columns. And so instead of recess, you would have lunch, and maybe you would make 8 columns for every day so that you could mimic this same pattern, or maybe you would do something else. There's lots of options. I think you're seeing how the machinery works. You can bend to that machinery to what fits in your school. So anyway, let's go back then and talk about the setup that goes around this green box daily lunch schedule so that you can understand how that works. So let's go back to setup. And the settings for the lunch are right here, cafeteria and lunch. So let's talk through this. Do you have a cafeteria? If you want to opt out of this functionality, then you just say, no, I don't have a cafeteria, and it will set the number of sections to 0. And then you don't worry about this. And so let me do that. Let me try that, save next, and I'll go show you what that looks like. Go back to planning. So now all that's gone. It's not there at all, and we're just ignoring that functionality. And in this case, you would need to go, presumably, make a special area that is your lunch columns, and you add it in like these recess ones. Let's go back and turn that back on. So we're going to say, no, I do have a cafeteria, and I like my 8 columns. Let me do that and save it. Make sure it comes back successfully. Yep, there we go. So we're back to where we were. So let's go back to setup and talk about what's here. So the number of sections that fit in the cafeteria, that 8 determines how many columns there are in that green box. And so that helps you understand, here's how many people I can put in the cafeteria, and just geometrically, that lets you not put more people in there than will fit, because the columns are there, and this is what it is. And so all here you have 8 in there at once. You can't put a 9th one because you'll be outside of the green box. And so that's just a visual way, a geometric way to make sure you don't overflow your cafeteria. That's a helpful approach. So what else is here? Well, obviously it's pretty simple. It's how many minutes does a particular class have for lunch. And then you have a lunch start time and a lunch stop time. This lunch start time is the time for your whole school in which lunches should begin. No lunches should happen before that. And then the lunch time and the stop time is the time when the last class should be finished with lunch. So that produces the size of this green box in which your lunch schedule should appear. So that's pretty straightforward. I think what I haven't shown you yet is, let's suppose, well, there's one other place that you can have some settings for lunch, and that's in this grade level details section. And over here at the right, I'll scroll over a little bit to make it easier to see. There's this lunch section that lets you set grade level details that could be different between the various grades. And so what can you do? Well, you see daily or none. And so, for example, let's suppose you have your kindergartners, maybe the kindergartners don't eat in the cafeteria, maybe they eat in their room, or maybe they're a half-day kindergarten and they're not with you for lunch. Then you can set that to none, and that will take away those lunch blocks for those kindergartners and not create them to go on the schedule. So that's an option that might work that's necessary for many schools. And the other thing that you can do here, obviously you can change the number of minutes if it's different. For lunch, probably not, but there is this idea to create one block for each section or one block for each grade. And so you can change how it is that you do the scheduling. Do you do it by section, or do you send a whole grade into the cafeteria at once? And so let me just show you how that looks. So let's change all of these to grade. And I'll do kindergarten as well, but I think with the 0 it won't matter. So there, we've said kindergarten doesn't go to the cafeteria, and all of these are going to do by grade instead of by section. So having done that, let me look back at planning, and well, look here. Now we have 1st through 5th grade, no kindergarten, but there's just one block for each grade. And obviously if we look at this, we know that this isn't going to work very well in the sense that I can't send the whole school to the cafeteria at once. Really what I want to do is be able to have two, because I think I can put 2 grades in there at once, 8 sections, 8 classes. And you want these to be, down here below that after that case. But as I'm looking at this, 8 wide isn't helping me. Really, I want this to be 2 wide because I know that I can put 2 grades there. So let's go back to the setup, and I'll show you that obviously, well, this says number of sections that fit. Well, I know that 8 is setting the width of that box, and I know I want it to be 2. So let me make that change and save that. And then I can go over to planning and look and see, now I have a box that's 2 wide, and my lunches are like that. So you can do this sort of thing as well. And so let me actually bring these down and see if I can line them up really nicely for you here, and you can get a sense for how that looks. We'll try that out. There's a 30, and this one's at 1 off, and we'll go click 1 down, and then put this in at noon. There you go. So that's another way to do lunch if you want to do it by grade, and you can see how the machinery works for this built-in lunch machinery. So well, there's the options then. For recess, you can put them as core blocks, or you can treat them as specials and make columns here that you see on the master schedule for recess. For lunches, you have 3 options. You can use this daily lunch schedule functionality and puts it over here. That will make the lunch, that assumes the lunches are the same every day, and that should work well for you. You can do it by sections or by grades. But if you don't like that, you want to do something else, maybe lunches happen in the classroom and you don't have a schedule, everybody eats in their classroom with their classroom teacher. You can put lunches on the core schedule. We put the recess here, but we could just as easily put lunches here, and as we could turn off this lunch and make core blocks for lunches, or you can treat lunches as a special and have columns over here in the master schedule for each day, and that allows you to make lunch different for every day, or different one day of the week if it needs to be that way. Obviously there's more work with that because you have a lot more blocks to place, but it gives you the flexibility to make happen what you need to have happen. So let's go back to, let's consider next what happens in the schedules administration tab. What can we do there to manage schedules? We'll talk through those issues here. So schedules, you can have more than one schedule, and there are and if you want to update the title of a schedule, you can just type in a number here and hit update the title, and that will give you that lets you set the names. And if you're obviously, generally speaking, you're going to make a schedule for your school and you're going to put your school's name here. But if you have different ideas you're trying out, you may want to put some kind of a name there for that lets you know what idea is going on in that schedule. You know, maybe you're trying shorter this or longer that or whatever. There's an activate button that chooses which schedule is the one you want to work on, and there's a little blue hand that has its finger pointing at the one that's active over here. If you have a schedule that you want to duplicate, you want to make another copy of the exact same thing, you hit this duplicate button and it'll give you another schedule. There's an advantage in that in the sense of making backups of what you're working. Maybe you've worked on your schedule quite a while and you like it, but then you want to try something, maybe experimental. Well, making a backup and working from a duplicate was an excellent idea, because then if your experiment doesn't work out, you can always back up without having to redo that work or make, you know, it just makes for a lot less hassle in that way. Obviously, if you try something and it makes a mess, you know, it might be hard to recover. So, so duplication is good. It's just as a backup. If you want to delete a schedule because, you know, it just doesn't work, or it's not, whatever reason you might have for cleaning up, deletion is fine. It'll work. The thing that you need to do, well, let's try this. I'll hit duplicate, and we have to wait for just a second for it to think while it copies all that material. And now, so here's our duplicate. We've just made it into another one of that same one. But if I hit delete, then it's going to ask me, are you sure that this particular schedule with this particular sharing key you want to delete? And we say, yep, I'm sure. So we'll do that. So once you do that deletion, it's gone. And so we're not saving everything at every keystroke and being able to back things up. If the delete is a delete and it's gone. So don't hit that lightly, and that's why it's red, to give you that warning. Let me talk to you a little about this top part. You can organize your schedules in some ways, and so actually in this case there are two folders. We have a current and we have a previous year's folder. Let me click on that and say, well, it has some over here, and let me go back to current. So that folder, up here at the top, as I select that, it will then change the view to show me the schedules that are in that folder. And you can make as many of these folders as you like. Let me do something here. Let me just change that name to something that, let's see, let me put the word backup here so we'll recognize it. And I'll update that title. So now, let's suppose I want to move this backup schedule into the prior year folder or something else. I want to move it someplace. So if I click on this folder that's next to that, the folder icon that's next to that schedule, you can see this drop down is here, and I can say, well, I want to move that to previous years. And if you do that, it's gone. It goes to the others. And so I'll show you that it's there by clicking previous years. And now I'm looking at the ones that are in the previous years folder, and you can see here's that backup schedule. I'll put it back in the front in the other one. So anyway, there we go. So that's how you can move schedules between folders using those processes. You can sort them by date or by name in terms of what order they show up here. And then there's this button for set up folders, because maybe you want different folders. Let's talk about what's here. So this is our folder setup. We have a current folder, and it has 3 schedules in it, and I have previous years 3 schedules, and then there's 3 buttons up here. I can delete a folder, I can move schedules, and I can make a new folder. So let me do this. Let me make a new folder, and let me say temporary. And so I'm going to create a new folder. So now I have temporary. And this says I can edit folder names if I press enter to save the changes. So I want to say temporary B, and that updated the name. So then let me see if I can move schedules. So move schedules from let's move schedules from previous years to that temporary B. Move. So I ask for, here's from, there's to for folders, and then move. And so that moved from previous years, and you can see now it has 0 schedules in it, and the 3 that were there are now down in temporary B. Well, let me put them back because that's what I want, where I want them. So let me put them from temporary B back to previous years. So that's temporary B. Now, if I want to delete a schedule, let's suppose I'm done with temporary B. I didn't really want that anyway. So I can hit delete button. This pops up, delete a folder and its schedules. So if there were schedules in temporary B, those would go away as well. And again, that's permanent. Are you sure you want to delete that selected folder and all of its schedules? Yes. So that's gone. And so if I hit cancel, we go back to normal, and here we are back to where we were. Okay, so those are the tools for managing existing schedules. And so there's quite a bit there, and you should be able to keep track of your life and make it sensible for yourself. So let's talk about these 2 boxes down here about creating schedules. Let's talk about the one on the right first. Let's suppose you want to copy a shared schedule, and this would happen mostly if you have a colleague who also has an account with ESSMaker, and you want to share a schedule, and you want them to be able to see what's in your schedule or whatever. And what you can do is each schedule has a sharing key written down under here, and you can see there's a sharing key. And so if you put that sharing key in this box, say you give that sharing key to the colleague, they log in, and in their account they would put in that sharing key in this field and hit create, then it would make a copy of your schedule, and they would have a copy to look at and do whatever they want to with it. If they make changes to that schedule, that's different. It's a different schedule. Then at that point their changes will not affect your schedule. And if you make changes to this schedule after that, after they make a copy, then they won't see those new changes. So they would have to make another copy as they go along. So it's just a copy at a point in time, and it's not a looking at the same schedule. It's a copy. So that's helpful as a sharing process if you're if you have a colleague and you're doing some work together in that way, where similar kinds of work. Mostly you'll hit this blank schedule to say, I want to make a brand new one. So let's click on that button and I'll show you what's here. Again, I think during the main introduction video we talked about these a little bit, but there are 3 kinds of schedules you can make, and you can create a traditional schedule is the one that we've typically been looking through. It has flexible blocks that go anywhere you want. It has the most features. It has grade level planning. It has really all that you need to probably make a schedule for your school. The classroom only schedule is a subset of that would be used by just a classroom teacher whose school doesn't use this software or whatever, and they just want something very simple for the one classroom core schedule, and they're just going to put blocks on there. And it's true that if you have the sharing key, you can use the sharing key from the traditional master from your whole school to make yourself a schedule, and it'll copy out your specials for you. But mostly this is what it is for just classroom teachers. And so if you're making a schedule for the whole school, there's really no need to do this classroom only part. All the features there are over here in the traditional master. This is just intended to make it a little simpler for the classroom teacher. So then the other option is this rotating specials area master, where this is a different kind of schedule. It's a little stricter in some ways, a little more clean in other ways. But this is a schedule where every class has its specials at the same time every day, and just which one they go to rotates through a checkerboard-like pattern where they would go, music, art, phys ed, library, music, art, phys ed, library, around and around and around throughout the school year. And so that's a different kind of schedule you can make. We weren't going into that particular kind of schedule at this time. We're going to stick to just giving you the instructions on how to do a traditional master schedule within this software. So that's the setup process. That's the Schedules tab, and once you're finished with that, you can go into the setup process and do the various things that it allows you to do. Let's talk a little bit about how to do the setup process in detail. And let's begin in this case with starting a brand new schedule from scratch. And so let's do a blank schedule that's a traditional master schedule. And this is the one that has the most features, and it's the kind of schedule that we want to look at. So we've jumped right in, it brings us right into the setup process, and it lets us set a title, and you know, just for to show you what we're doing, we'll give it a title, and like the one we've been using for this these samples. And here we have the section where it asks for the number of sections or classrooms that are at each grade level. And so let's, in this case, let's just do 4 each, starting with kindergarten. And that many. You can do more than that if you want. If you have a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, or maybe if you have a grade, a section of students that is apart from your grades that are treated in some special way like a grade, then you could put that here and give the number of sections, pre-K as well. Down here is the lunch section, and there's another chapter in this video that talks about lunch at some detail, so we'll leave that for right now. You can refer you back there for lunch, but basically if you want to use the lunch functionality, here it is. And if you want to opt out of this and do lunch a different way, you would hit no. We'll leave that alone for now. Let's talk a little bit in more detail about the school day. There are times for the school day here, start of the school day and end of the school day, and so what should you put there? Well, think about what it is that the earliest block is that you want to put on the schedule. So, you know, if you're serving breakfast and you want to put a breakfast block on your schedule someplace, then, you know, put the time that breakfast begins here is the start of the school day. And similarly for dismissal, whatever's happening at the end, if you want a block that represents something at the end of the school day, put the latest time there for that block. Now, you can also set here how many days you want in this schedule, and most of you are going to do 5-day schedules, but there are schools that do 6-day schedules or 4-day schedules, and just the possibilities here are pulled out from 1 to 10. If you're making a 10-day schedule, that's sort of like an A week and a B week, and it might make sense to do 2 5-day schedules. But you can do one 10-day schedule in here. Here's where you give the titles for those days, and obviously by default we start out with Monday through Friday, but if you're doing some other number of days, you may want to give some other naming convention for those days here to help you keep track of how you do things. So we hit Save Next, and we'll be on to the next thing. Here is the Special Areas Setup screen, and this is the one that in the setup process that has the most importance. It's the core. It has the most logic that we have to work through here. So let's just talk through what's here. By default, we're going to put here music, phys ed, art, and library. The system puts those in place to prompt you as to how to use this table. Obviously, if you don't have art, you would erase that line or put something else in its place. But the point is that each of these lines, or each of these rows in this table, represents a service or a subject area where students are taught something or other. And so typically it's going to be things like these specialists, music, phys ed, or art. And the use of this table, the logic behind it, is divided into 2 parts. And so first of all, you should think about the left 3 columns. So here we have music and code for music, and then a number of instructors. And so those 3 things together tell us that on the master schedule, I need a column for that music teacher for every day, because the master schedule in this software is effectively the schedule for your specialists. And so if you have this kind of arrangement, that's what you get. And so just to show you the details as well, how this works out, I'm going to say we have 2 music teachers, but one of the others, just so you can see the contrast. So the left 3 columns then will determine how many columns there are on the master schedule for what subjects, and so this says what it says. Let's look at the right 3 columns. what these three do, the sessions per week, minutes, and how, whether it's a section or grade, is these three columns determine how many blocks the system generates that have to be put onto the schedule. It's how much of music do all the students in your school receive, how much phys ed, how much art, how much library, and so this number of sessions per week is, in this case, is set to 2 for music and 30 minutes each. So it's how many times do they meet during this schedule, and then what's the duration? How many minutes are each of those meetings taking place? And so this one is set for 2 and 30, and 2 and 30, and 1 and 40 for those at the bottom. Now this drop down at the right here tells us how many blocks are getting created, in the sense of, is there an individual block for every class or section, or we can switch this to be by grade, and which would say, if I did this, then it's going to create one block for all of second grade and one block for all of third grade. Well, I say one, actually 2 blocks, one for each session. But this would mean, if you do that, if you're putting grade here, you're saying I'm going to send the entire grade level to that activity at the same time. Now, obviously, for music, that's probably no one's going to do that, because you want to keep the class sizes smaller for those specialists. But if you were putting something here like recess or lunch or some other kind of activity and counting that as a special and wanting columns on the master schedule for that activity, then those kinds of activities, sometimes it makes sense to send the whole grade level to them, and that's where this particular feature is useful. Mostly you're going to keep this all at sections, because you want a block for every section or a block for every class throughout the school. So you might be asking yourself the question, well, if I'm setting these values for the entire school, what if there are differences between the grade levels? And well, that's what happens next. So let's save the form and go to the next page, which is the grade level details tab. And so once we're at this point, most everything is set, but we can make distinctions if we like. And so you can see here that we have music, phys ed, art, and library as each column of this table, but now we have each grade spelled out as each row. And so for example, you might in your school, maybe the kindergartners have these special areas, but they're not as long. So let's just to show you how that works, let's put a 2 there, and let's say the kindergartners music is 20 minutes instead of 30 minutes. And let's say their phys ed is 20 minutes, and let's just keep that pattern going, and let's say art is 30 minutes and library is 30 minutes, just to see how that looks. Now, so this is the kind of thing, though, that would help you if you did have shorter sessions for kindergarten, or perhaps one of these special areas. Maybe you have some, maybe some foreign language or some other topic, maybe computers or something that you only offer to your upper grades. And so in that case, you'd come in and put 0 on the sessions per week on the lower grades, and then just have 1 session per week, or however many sessions for the upper grades. And you can make those kinds of distinctions in this table. Let's go ahead and save that. And now we're on the Teachers Availability Times tab, and there's a number of things I need to tell you about here, but first what I want to do is I want to take you back to special areas and show you what happened in the meantime. So we made some changes, and now we have these pink boxes, and I want to explain what the pink means. So on this, remember, the Special Areas tab is setting school-wide defaults, and so we're saying, across the school, music happens 2 sessions per week at 30 minutes. But this is pink, and there's a note down here to tell you what the pink means. And pink boxes indicate that there's a grade level difference that you've made. And so, as you recall, what we just did is we said not everybody gets 30. We were going to say for our kindergartners they just get 20. And so all of these are pink because we changed kindergartners, and it's a warning to us that not everyone is getting this amount. Some are getting some different amount that would be showed on the grade level details tab. Well, the point of showing this warning here is you may come back at some point later and say, I have changed my mind and I don't want music to be 30 minutes, I want it to be 35 minutes. And so let's try that. If I change that to 35 and then I hit save, what's going to happen is that 35 is going to overwrite all the changes I've made that were school differences. And that's what this says here. Changing a value in the pink box changes all the grade levels to match, erases any previously set differences. Let me do that so you can just see what happens. So we do this, and now you can see that music all goes back to 35 and my kindergartners are back at 35. And if I want 35, I changed my mind, I made it all 35, but I want kindergarten to be something different, I have to go put that difference back in. Now, just to make life, keep things the same, let's go back to 30 here. And I might as well go back to 20 here. But you're seeing what I'm talking about with the pink boxes. And I wanted you to grasp what that means and how that works in case you're making changes and you won't be confused. So anyway, the fourth tab in setup is, it may seem complicated because there's a lot here, but this is actually a simpler page. You have three sections here of teachers. And so you have your special area teachers, you have your classroom teachers, and then down here you have other teachers or staff, which you can add if you want to. I don't know that most of you will do that, but it's available. So let's talk through what's here and why are all these times here and what's happening. So first of all, maybe starting at the left, we have these special areas and we have a code for them. And your codes should stay short. These codes are going to appear on the blocks that go on the calendar, and so they should be memorable and help you understand what it's for, what the block is for. But the blocks are not huge, and so if you make this 5 characters or 6 characters, it may run off the block or run into things or take up too much space. And so my advice is stick to 3 or 4 characters or fewer. And since we have 2 music teachers, see, this is the other thing I said. Remember, I said let's have 2 music teachers. Maybe we should go back and look at that. Just remember, I did that change a little bit ago, and I didn't point that out to you. I wanted you to show you that if we put 2 music teachers in, what happens? Well, one of the things that happens is over here on the Teachers tab, is that I get 2 lines for music. And each of those is a separate instructor for music. And in the code, it can make sense to actually make this code a little different for those 2, but how you do that's up to you. And so in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take away the S and put an A, and I'll take away this S and put a B for just the A teacher and the B teacher. You can do whatever. Now, there's also a column here for the teacher names, and that makes sense to do, at least eventually, for all of these. Let me put in some. Abel and Edward and Lawrence and Brooks. So I put in some names for the specialists, and you can do a similar thing for the teachers, and so let me do a few of those as well. So let's see. So let's do just those 4. So that's kindergarten. You'll note that the codes for the classroom sections start with the letter or a number for the grade. So here's first grade with a 1, and then it just counts up A, B, C, D as to however many sections there are at that grade level. This is what you get automatically. You can put into these codes as well anything you like. Again, keep the codes 3 or 4 characters at the biggest. Some schools might put in a letter here that goes with the last name of the teacher. So for example, instead of KA, they might put KD, KC, KF, KH, and that might work for you. But you may have other kinds of naming that you're already using. You can put it there. Let's do one thing. What order shall we do this in? Let's go down here, and let's put in another teacher or a staff member, and they would show up here in a list. Obviously there's nothing here at this point, but there is this little form that lets us add teachers. And so let's put a code in of guidance, GYD, and let's put a teacher named Smith. And so I put in those two values and hit add teacher, and so now I have a guidance counselor named Smith. And I don't know, and then this stays here, so I can do something else. I don't know, let's suppose we have a second guidance teacher named Josephs. And so we could add that teacher. And so you just make a list here of other teachers and staff you might want. And again, you might make a difference between these guidance so that they're not don't say the same. I don't know if that matters here a lot because of the nature of these. But let's suppose you make a mistake or you decide you don't want one of those. How do you delete? There is a way here to delete one of those. And so you first click the box on the staff row you want to delete. So let's suppose I made a mistake and there really isn't a Joseph's teacher. I don't want that. So I can check the box next to that teacher and hit this, and then it's going to ask me for sure, confirm, these teachers will be deleted. Joseph's, yes please, go ahead. And so that one goes away. So these are other teachers, this is the way that happens. So let's then talk about all these times that are here, because that answers a number of questions for you, and also it lets me show you how to get things, how to edit all these times. This tab is called Teacher Availability Times, and it's intended to express when is it that these teachers are in your building such that they can teach classes. And so, yes, your classroom teachers are probably hired in such a way that they are there the whole week. You know, they're start to finish, Monday to Friday. But often, schools will have special area teachers that they share with some other school, and so there may be days where they're not in the building, or there may be days where there are only there half of the day and they're at another building half of the day. So let's see if we can show how some of that works. And so one way to do that is, the gist is that you have to put the times over here where they are in your building, and whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. And so, for example, let's suppose that this second music teacher is not a full-time music teacher. They're just, I don't know, let's say Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so that music teacher, that means we need to take them away from Tuesday. They're not here. So let's just blank those out for that teacher. And so we said Tuesday and Thursday. So I'm just highlighting and deleting those times. And so now we've got that music teacher named Baker only in the building Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Well, that's good. Now, this could get tedious if I have a bunch of changes to make that are the same across these days, and so there's a way to go about this a little more quickly. There's some tools here to make the editing go faster. So let's suppose that in addition to that, let's suppose that the art teacher is only in the building in the mornings. Well, let's say at least by 2 or so they have to leave. So that would mean I'd have to change this 3:30 to 2, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. Well, how could I do that and not have to type them all in? Well, that's what this little form up here at the top says. To edit multiple times at once, I want to enter a new time, and I want to make it 2 o'clock. Is what I want to make it, but where am I going to put it? Well, here's what I need to do. I need to check these little check boxes to highlight the ones I want to change. And so what I've said is I want to change the stop time. So I click the stop button on all the days for which I want to make a change. And that causes these columns to turn gray. But then I want to change it for the art teacher. And so I click the art teacher row on this side. And so what that does is it makes a gray row, and where the gray rows and the gray columns intersect, they are black. And so these black cells are the ones that will change when I click the apply button. So maybe we'll read the instructions here. Enter a new time, select the rows and column checkboxes to make black squares for entry, and then click apply. And if you want, so let me do that, apply. So that took all of those in one click and made them all 2 o'clock. So, and again, if you wanted to make them all blank, to say that person, and again, you'd have to do a couple of these, but I'll just show you. You can just make that empty that text box out, and then hit apply, and then it would empty them. Now in this case, I'm just going to leave them at, well, let me put it back at 3. Well, no, I want to show you 2 o'clock. So let me do 2 o'clock and hit apply. So that changes these settings such that it tells you who's in your building at what times. And the purpose of that is so that the validator in this software can make sure that you're not applying class assignments to teachers when they're not in your building. And so we've done 2 things here, and I'll show you what it looks like in planning in just a second. The music teacher, the second music teacher is a half-time, not in your building on Tuesday or Thursday, and the art teacher leaves at 2 every day. So let's see what happens. That doesn't get applied until I hit the save next, and so let me do that. And when I hit this, I'm finished with setup. It's going to take me to planning, and that's fine because that's what I want to show you what it looks like there. So now we're on the planning page. And there's a number of things here I want to show you as we get into planning, but mostly at this point I just want to show you how this changed based on setup. So, there's a couple of things to look at here. One is we have the days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So we have our 5-day schedule. On each of those days we have our specialists, MUA and MUB, for the 2 music teachers. Phys Ed, Art, Library, and again repeated Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. You'll notice that the gray boxes are saying this is when that teacher's in the building. And remember, for the MUB, for that B music teacher, we said they're not in the building on Tuesday and they're not in the building on Thursday, and so those sections are white. And then if we scroll down, we can see that the art teacher is leaving and gone at 2 o'clock each of those days. And so that's this gray versus white can act as a prompt to see where is it allowed to put blocks. And so that's the piece I wanted to show you here. And I think that will give us that gives you a good sense of how setup works and how it makes changes to things. Let's go back and review, and just so we take a look at setup rather than go forward to planning. So you can set the schedule and how much you get, the cafeteria and lunch and school day here. You can make changes as you would see fit. The special areas, we set the number of columns and the number of blocks that go for each one. I guess I could show you the number of blocks as we go over to planning. I will go back and do that. And then the grade level details allow us to make changes across the grades so that the grades aren't necessarily the same as others. And so, for example, with kindergarten we made those shorter, and I can show you those blocks. And then you have a teachers tab that lets you say when are they in your building and what are their names, what codes are used for the blocks that are associated with. So one other thing then in planning I'll show you that goes with this. Given the changes that I put in the place, these are the special areas and these are the buttons that pop up the blocks. Let me click there, and you can see here that these are the kindergarten musics and art and library, and those blocks are shorter than these other blocks. They're 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Let me show you by contrast. Just by looking at them you might be able to see the difference. See, these are larger, and these are going to be 30-minute blocks, and these are 40-minute blocks. And so that lets you know, that lets you see what the result was of those choices we made about blocks. So the setup process created these blocks, and then the planning process gets them down on your schedule so that you have a good schedule to work from. Let's talk about the planning pages and the details regarding the tools that are on that page. And in order to do that, let's just take a quick step through the setup pages to see what school we have set up here. We have 4 sections at each grade level, K through 5. We're going to do a 5-day schedule, 9:30 to 3:30, and lunch according to the standard pattern we've been using in this set of videos. The special areas will be just 1 teacher at each of the 4, and with these sessions and minutes that we've looked at before. Grade level details, we won't make any difference. Teachers, we've put in names for all the teachers, and we have the codes, and we have all the specialists in the building throughout the whole week. So let's go to planning and look at these details. So there are a number of tools here, and when you first land on this page, the special areas button is highlighted, and that gives us these buttons here for special areas for each of the grade levels. And so, for example, if I'll click on grade 3 specials, it pops up a ribbon which shows me the blocks that setup has produced for the 3rd grade. And so those blocks need to make it onto the schedule, and there's a couple of different ways we can do that. We'll walk through that in this chapter. I guess I will point out, if it's just not obvious to you, that there's a highlighting process here where if I've highlighted 3D, and all of those 3D blocks now are sort of flashing reverse video, so that you can see where that class is throughout the schedule. Right now they're not on the schedule at all, but once they're down here on the master schedule, you'll be able to do that, and you can see, well, what is that particular class doing throughout the week. Let's close the ribbon for right now. We'll get back to that in a minute, but the gist is, so I want you to grasp that the special areas button here shows you these special area buttons, which will show you those blocks, and that's where a lot of your work is going to take place, is that particular thing. Getting those blocks onto the calendar is 3 ways. One is to drag and drop them out of the ribbon onto the calendar. Another way is to use this form to say, well, which one do I want to put on, and fill out the times and hit the place specials button. And then the 3rd way would be to do autofill. And so maybe we'd start with that just to show you how that works. And then we'll look through all these other details about things that are happening here. First of all, let me talk about what's happening down here below. Let's just consider this. Over here's our daily lunch schedule, and there's a chapter that talks about lunches and that in more detail. So we're going to leave that for now. We have this other part here is the master schedule itself. We have the music teacher, phys ed, art, library each day, Monday through Friday. And these lunches, these gray lunches, are the lunches for the specialists. And these are like custom blocks that they're not the setup blocks for the subject area instruction, but each of these people needs a time for lunch. And so by default, we're going to put this on there for you. You can change these and move them around if you like. And so maybe 12 o'clock isn't where you want them to go. Maybe you want them to be, let's say you want these all to be at 11:30 instead of 12. So let me show you how you can do that more quickly. We can drag and drop these by just clicking on them and pulling them up, but since there's so many and they're all together, we can use the tool here called Shift Times. And so if I click up there, I could say, let's move all the blocks that are between noon, 12 o'clock, and 12:30 we'll get the bottom of those blocks. And so all the blocks across the whole week that are in that time frame are these lunches, and I could say I would like to move them 30 minutes earlier. I can do earlier or later, it's the direction, but if I do that, then it'll move them up, and that can save you work if you've done various things. If you want to do that, that's fine. Also you could apply this. Let's suppose you start the schedule and you decide, well, I have to move the whole thing 15 minutes later, and you don't want to do that block by block. Well, here you can move a bunch of it at once, and that saves you some effort and time for certain kinds of activities. So let's go back to autofill and let's start this process just to show you what happens. This is one way to get blocks on there, and it's going to add all the blocks from a particular grade all at once. And we'll do 5th grade. And all you do is you click that one, and which grade you want to do, and hit do autofill. So we'll do that. And so this has put the 5th grade then, and so let me just show you what logic it used, or at least to talk you through what it's trying to do. It will take those specials and try to put them on to get you common planning time, so that all of well, let's put it this way. If at this time on Monday, all of the fifth grades, A, B, C, and D, all those sections, have left their classroom teacher and are away at some sort of special, and so then your fifth grade teachers could meet together and have planning time that's together. Not all schools prioritize that, but some schools really like that feature of a planning process, and this autofill tries to do that for you. It may or may not work depending on how your school works in terms of how many specials you have and how many teachers and all that. So that's what this has done. It's tried to spread them out. It tries to lump them together. It tries to put them as early in the day as it can based on what's already there. The autofill tries to then also just spread them out across the week as best it can. And so this is what it did. Your school, it may not look like that. It may be something that's totally unacceptable and that you need to move things around a lot. But give it a try, see what happens for your case. Now, in this case, I can see that there's this pattern that's being followed, and then on Thursday it took these two and put them over on Friday. And in some ways it kind of depends on what you want to have happen for your school. So for example, if it's in this pattern like on a Monday, this is a long time of common planning of a sort that it could last for a whole hour, but over here on Friday we have the 5B and 5C, but not 5A and 5D. And so if I needed to make sure that the teachers had some planning every day, then I might want to take this 5A and 5D and move it over there, so that then they would be guaranteed to have at least 30 minutes of planning every day of the week. So that might be one thing you'd want to change, and drag these over there like this and well, actually that one isn't going to work. It's going to go here. I forget how I have to do this. We have to think about it a little bit to see if we can get 5A and 5D over here in art. And so that means looking at here's a 5D, so maybe pull that over. And then what's 5A library? 5A library. Yeah, but then there's this cascade of things that happen. What I want to do is I want to leave this here. I want to show you something else. So anyway, you can try to find patterns that let you fill out the week if that's a requirement for you. In this case though, what I want to do is put this over here to match the same pattern on that day as we've got on these other days, because I want to show you another feature and how some of this works. And remember, dragging and dropping is if you pick up if you click on the block where you can see the time, it'll show you the time you're at so that you can drop it where you want it to go. And if you can get it exactly there, that's good. If you're having trouble getting it exactly right, at least if you can get it close, there's 9:32, but I want it to 9:30. If I click on it, it'll put this border around it, and then I can use the up and down arrow keys to move it 1 minute at a time. 2 clicks puts it in place, and then click somewhere else takes away the border. So there it is. We've used autofill. We've done a little bit of dragging and dropping, and we have, in this case, what looks like that could be maybe a good schedule to start with. Let's try grade 4. Now, if I do grade 4, if you think ahead of what's going to happen, it's going to start again at Monday and work its way across the week and try to put things as early as possible. And so it's going to put it here in this 10 o'clock hour, and we'll probably have a pattern much like this right here. And we'll also probably end up with Friday being pretty blank. And so in this kind of a pattern, if this is falling out for you, it might make sense to say, well, I don't want every hour to be blank on Fridays. That's not good for those specialists, because it kind of fills up all the other days and leaves their blanks all on their gaps all on one day. So what if we were to switch Friday and Monday? So I could put these over there, and then this next one might work a little better. So there's a tool that can flip days around, so you can exchange. And so these tools let you exchange days, or grade levels or even sections. And so let's try switching Monday and Friday and see how that works. So if I do this, that flips those around and puts those over there. And this is a tool that might be useful at certain times or for various things. Maybe you get a lot of the schedule made and you decide that really just everything you've done on Monday needs to be on Friday, and so you make that switch. Or maybe you make a schedule and you like it, but you want an A schedule and a B schedule where things are flopped around, and you could use this to switch days. Whatever, it's a tool for Exchange. I wanted to point out to you how that works. So let's go back to autofill and let's do the 4th grade. So here comes the 4th grade, and indeed it followed much the same pattern. You can see on Monday it pushed things up to 9 rather than come to 10 because it was blank there. And maybe what we're wanting is to do the same sort of thing where let's pull these down, and this will take a little bit of doing, but I'll try to drag these down expeditiously and get them pretty close to where they need to be. I'm a little messy, but I'm getting them pretty close. Let's make them exact. I'm going to click on them and click up and down arrows and get them lined up properly. And then as well, let's bring these again over here to match those. And so we have that same pattern going. And that one needs to go down 1. So now we have 5th grade and 4th grade, and on this day the specialists have an hour break at the beginning of the day, and on this day maybe there'll be a blank here and there'll have a break a little later in the day, and we could just keep continuing this same thing. We said their lunches were here, and we're going to put the other grades out here, and hope it all fits. And maybe there's some places where we have to come in and fill in some gaps or something. It depends on what happens. I'm not going to take it any further at this point, but you're getting the gist of what's here. Let me show you dragging and dropping from the ribbon, just some instructions about that, because this is autofill, and you've been seeing how that works. It may or may not work as cleanly for you, but even if it's messier here, it may put them down in a place where they're close, and you can do some dragging around like I've been doing with this as well. But let's go back to special areas, and let me just show you this two other ways to go about putting blocks on the schedule. And so let's go to 3rd grade. So there are 2 ways. You can drag and drop them onto the schedule, or you can use this form. So let me actually do that for some of these blocks. So the ribbon is stuck to the top of the screen, the window, and the reason for that is that you can scroll your work up to where you want it to go. And let's just say we want to put these 3rd graders here after the specialist lunches. Well, I can't quite do that because they have their lunch at 12:28, so we can start them at 12:30. We can start 3rd grade at 12:30. Maybe that would be, if I switched and did 1st grade at 12, I could do them at 12 because they're finished lunch. Let me do that. So let me close the ribbon. I have an idea. Let's not do 3rd grade. Let's do, what'd I say, 1st grade. Let's do the red ones. Maybe they'll fit better given what we've got going on here. So let's suppose I put some music on here, and so here's the 1A music. I'm going to put that class at noon, and then I'm going to take a 1A phys ed, and I'm going to put them at 12:30. So they go from music to phys ed, and let's put with them the B's going the other way. That pattern sort of works with this school's design for things. Yours may be entirely different patterns, but this is the pattern that works here, and it might work pretty well. So then we want to B1B phys ed. So let's put that one down here. And so the point is, obviously, so what am I doing to do this dragging? I find the thing, I click on it, I bring it down. If you click up near the top or way down near the bottom while you're dragging, you can see the times. And so that's at 12:02 or 12, and I can drop it there. The other thing to notice, if you haven't seen this already, is that's a phys ed class, and so I have it over library and I can't drop it there, but once I get the top center of the block over the phys ed column, then I can drop it. I don't have to worry about getting it exactly in the middle. The part you're concerned about is getting it up and down to the right time. You see? So I can drop it over here and it'll fall into the right place, or I can drop it over here. Once that turns gray, I can drop it there. It won't let me drop it somewhere else. If I try to drop it over here, it's going to go back to where it was. And I might as well add that, you know, let's suppose I didn't want to do that one. I want to put it back in the ribbon. I made a mistake. I want to do something else. Then I can put it over the ribbon, up here in the ribbon, anywhere really, but up here in the ribbon, and it'll put it right back in place. And then I can do something else. Now, the thing to bear in mind with that is that, especially if the blocks are long ones, like those art blocks or library blocks, if you're bringing it up and the top of the thing you're dragging happens to be above the window and you drop it there, it doesn't like that. So maybe I'll do it from down here. So if I put it up there and I'm saying I want to take it out of the calendar, put it in the ribbon, and it's above there, and I turn it loose, it goes back to where it was. Make sure the top to put it there somewhere, you put the top where it needs to go. Okay? So, well, and I do want that B to go there, so let's just do that. So, anyway, so you can see how the drag and drop is working, and those are the tips I would give you for doing this kind of drag and drop. You can scroll this up to get it closer where you want to work, and so you don't have to drag so far. And you can hit the close ribbon button to make that go away. You can pick a different one if you want. So now here's the other thing we can do. Let's talk about this form here, because we've put some first grades in after lunch here, but let's suppose we want to do this differently, and let's suppose I want to put in I don't know, let me put in C. I've got A and B. Let's do C and D. So here's 1C, music, and I see that they have 2 music blocks. So where do I want to put those 2 1C music blocks? Well, I want to put them on Tuesday and Thursday at 12 o'clock. And so in this case, I can, because I know the times and I'm just thinking about the times as opposed to dragging and dropping, pardon me, I can hit play specials and it puts them both there at once. And so I can do the same pattern. So then I can do this and I can say, well, I want to put the 1C phys ed, there are 2 of those. I want to put them on Tuesdays and Wednesday, but I want those to go at 12:30 because they'll be afterwards. And so that puts that in, and so then I can do D. Was that D? That's C. So let me do D, Randall, and let me go back to music. No, I'll stick with phys ed. Well, I guess it doesn't matter one way or the other. Music. So I'll do the 1D music. There are 2 of those that are not assigned, and I want to put them on Tuesday and Wednesday, and at 12:30. I want them to go in this section, so that's at 12:30 on those 2 days. Place those specials, and then I could say, now I'll do the phys ed for 1D, and that's the same time, but now this goes back to noon to follow the same pattern, place the specials. So this is another way. You can use this form to put specials onto the schedule, and frankly, I mean, if you want to, I closed the ribbon, but I could have had this open just so I can look at things and say, oh, well, I've got a couple of musics and I got the art and library to do yet, and so then that can act as a, you know, that might be a visual thing that you like, help you keep track of which ones need to go down there. So we've talked through, I think, the 3 ways. I've shown you the 3 ways to put blocks onto the schedule. You can drag and drop, you can use this form, and you can use the autofill. And that's the basic pattern that's followed, and just you make your schedule. This is your master schedule, and there are some other things that are going on here in some other tools. So let's talk about what else is on this row up here. valid. Let's just start at that. What's that do for you? Well, at this point, it's going to check the schedule for validity. And this is telling me that I have some classes that are not assigned. In fact, 84 classes. I'm not finished yet. But it also tells me that classes don't have the same special on the same day, and they don't have overlapping commitments, and the special areas don't have overlapping commitments, and the classes are within a window of availability for the special areas. Nobody's off where they're not supposed to be, and the lunches are not exceeding the maximum tables in the cafeteria. If you click this full details link, it will give a list of those actual classes. And I might as well do that for you. You can see what that looks like. That goes over to the report section, and it gives you this list. And so those are all the classes that are not assigned. If you had other issues, it would also give you notes about what those issues are, and this might help you find what the problem is and correct it. Let's go back to planning. So that was the validator. Is this a valid schedule? And you can do that anytime to see how things are going. So we have these 3 buttons here that deal with blocks, but these are special blocks. These are custom blocks, if you will. These blocks here that are on there are coming at these are the blocks that are produced by the setup process for those specials. But you can put any other kind of block on here you like that you create that is a custom block through this form, and then once you make those, you can use this edit form to change those blocks, or this delete form to delete those blocks. And so let me show you how all this works and what you might use it for. Well, what would you use it for? Well, one thing you might use it for is, let's suppose you have a 5th grade chorus, and it's just one block in the music teacher's schedule. You got to put it somewhere. Well, let's do that. Let's suppose that there's so this is going to be a 5th grade block, and so in this grader section I can pick a grade, or I can pick the section for this custom block. But since it's 5th grade course, it's the whole 5th grade, or at least part of the whole 5th grade. Maybe not everybody comes, but it's gonna span that grade. And let's just say it starts at 9:30. I see a blank there in this music teacher schedule, and let's suppose it lasts 30 minutes, and it's going to be on Monday. And I don't know what color. We can pick what color we want it to be. Well, I'll pick yellow. And the title is, well, let's call it chorus. I think I filled everything out. Let's go create the block. So there's the 5th grade chorus at 9:30. And so that's one kind of use for this kind of for these custom blocks. Another one would be for the specialist planning periods. These lunches are here for the specialists, but they also, you may want to be able to put in here an explicit planning time for them. So let's try that. Let's see how that works. So in that case, the grader section is optional because it's a planning period for that specialist. No grades are involved. And let's suppose I see this blank place here. Let's put them at 11 a.m. Oops, that's 1. Let's make it 11. And let's call it planning. And let's see, so special area. Okay, well, we have to do the special areas one at a time, and we're going to say it's a 30-minute planning period before their lunch. And let's change the color to I don't know, let's call it brown. And but I can make them more than one a day at a time. So I can say, let's put one on every day for the music teacher. And let's just do it for everybody. And so each specialist. There you go. So that's the use for this sort of thing, that you could say, let's make these custom blocks. And so I've created a bunch of them. Well, what if I wanted to edit them? So for example, let's suppose I want to edit that chorus, and 30 minutes is just not the right time. I need more time. I need 45 minutes. And so I want to make this 9:15. But otherwise it's fine. So I'll hit update. And so that's a longer period of time. That's a way to edit a block. Or for example, let's suppose we've decided we're not going to do chorus at all. I don't know, maybe that just just a happenstance. Let's suppose we want to delete a block. Well, if I click, now it'll show me, it puts a border around it to say which one am I going to delete or edit, but it also shows me the details so that I can see that this is 5th grade music Monday chorus, and I want to delete that block, so I do this and that goes away. Right, so you can create, edit, and delete custom blocks. These are not the setup blocks that are here. So if you're looking at grade 3 specials, these things, these are the setup blocks, and those need to make it on the calendar at least if you follow the pattern. There you go. That's how you use. So create, edit, and delete blocks. So we've covered all of these buttons. I've shown you a shift times where we shifted these lunches up, so we've looked at that. I've showed you an exchange where we shifted one day for another, flipped them Monday for Friday in order to make this, and then we have start over. Well, I guess I could do that, but I don't know that I need to. The point is, it's safe to hit that start over button, but what this tells you is the warning. Here's a red button. It says this will remove all the setup blocks from the schedule. The custom blocks will not be touched. And undo might work, but be careful. You may, because of that being such a big change, it may or may not catch what you want. So start over should take the purple and orange and red ones off and put them back in the ribbon, but then undo should put them back. And that's the point is that it's going to be rare that you're going to start over, but if you need to, there's a button for it. So let's then look up here at the top to view what else happens here on this master schedule, planning pages. We're in the planning tab. This is the master schedule. It has the daily lunch schedule. It has the schedule for the specialists and whatever else we've put here. And we've looked at the tools that are provided, but we have buttons up here for core classes, and we have at the end a button for teachers. And so this is additional planning material that you can do for other kinds of classes. So let's look at the 5th grade core. There's one for every grade level. Clicking core 5 brings us to a planning page, and this is different in that, yes, it has a section for each day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but the columns here are for the sections rather than some teacher. So although obviously this classroom 5A has a classroom teacher, and 5B and C similarly, but the point is this is the schedule for the 5A class or section, or 5B for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And we can see that the 5th graders get their specialists according to this schedule on the Tuesday through Friday time frame. And again, it has this highlighting business. When I'm highlighting 5A, you can see where 5A is, and that's that's less important here than on the master. Down here are the lunches for those classes. And so obviously these times where the students are in their specials are times where those classroom teachers could have a planning period or some duty or whatever it is that they need to be doing. But the rest of this time, they are responsible for their class and you're doing your core instruction. And so what would you put on this calendar? Well, it depends on whether you're wanting to make the schedule for when English is taught and when they do science and math and social studies and other subjects like that. If you can make blocks here for that purpose, and if you want to do that. The other thing this is good for are things like you might make an set of intervention blocks here when that intervention is coming to that class, or you might put in a recess block. That's one of the options for recess. There's another chapter that deals with lunch and recess, and it gave you those details, and you can go back there for if you want to review that. Let me just actually exercise these tools a little bit to show you how it works, although it's the same basic pattern. Let's suppose we want to do some blocks on here, and we can do the blocks either the whole grade and put a grade block on, or we can put in individual section blocks. So and I don't know, maybe we should do a grade block for for a title of English Language Arts. Okay, and we're going to do it the same time every day. So I'll click Monday through Friday. We're going to put 5 blocks on there for the whole grade. And we're going to, and since I see a blank here at 10, let's just say it starts at 10 a.m. And then the duration. Now, bear in mind, you know, some people get confused. This is the start time. Duration doesn't mean the stop time. Duration means how many minutes that it should take place. So you don't put a time here. You put, in terms of, I don't put 10, or I don't put 11, 30. I put the number of minutes. And so let's suppose English Language Arts is, I don't know, is it 90 minutes? Let's try that. And then, and let's do a different color. Create a block. So there's English Language Arts, and maybe that suits your school. But you can see that I've made blocks that cover all the sections. There's just one block. It covers the whole section each day. And that can make sense depending on what you're doing. But you could also have these blocks that are just section by section, because they're maybe different for different sections. And so I'll show you how you do that. So you do 5A, and I don't know, let's suppose you do math differently. Just to show you, I'll make some that are like this. Let's spell math that way. Let's put these at 11:30. I see a little bit of a blank there. So let's do that, and let's suppose that let's I don't know, let's say 45. I'm going to do this because I can see that 45 is going to fit here. Math is probably more than 45 minutes, and let's make it a different color. But now I'm doing 5A Davis every day of the week. 45 minutes at 11:30. So I should see just one block here, but every day. So there's that math, and so then maybe you would come in and put you know, 5B right next to that, or maybe, you know, maybe in the 5th grade you have one of those 5th grade teachers is a math specialist, and they teach all your math, and you're doing something else at that time with the others, and you know, you rotate through math in some way, whatever. There's lots of options as to how all that works. But so this is the basic pattern. Let's suppose I decide I made a mistake. I didn't like those maths and I wanted to delete them. Well, I want to click on the block I want to delete. Well, I want to get rid of that one. You have to do one at a time at this point. So that tells me the 5B on Monday is the one I want to get rid of. Creator section, delete block. And then I'll do this one. And then I'll do this one. And then I'll do this one. And I'll do that one. So I made a mistake. I didn't want that. I want to do something else. So create something else, or you can, again, you can edit blocks. You could click on something and say, okay, so I want to change the time from, you know, from 45 minutes to some other thing, or whatever. You can do any of those things. They're just like what we showed you on the other ones. You can shift times, same pattern, grab this whole business and move it down. You can exchange days. You know, for example, if I think that won't do quite the right time. Now, here's the other thing I want to show you, the time report. At the grade level, if you do a time report, it will tell you, it gives a tally of how much time is by weekly minutes are spent with each subject. And so if you do put in all of the math and English Language Arts and all that, this will tell you how many minutes of instruction they're getting in all those areas. And this kind of report, and there's a way to get this report as a PDF output in the report section as well. We'll get to that in a different chapter. But this will tell you, you know, how many of these minutes. And this can be useful for providing to stakeholders to demonstrate that, yes, our students are getting what we have determined to be the right amount of instruction for every subject. So that's the core subject, and really there's a separate one for every one of these grade levels, and so you can see that here. Let's look at the last thing that's on this page, and that's the teacher's schedule. So what you can see if you land here is that there are buttons here for all the teachers in the building, and it comes up with this teachers button that shows these. It begins with the first one on the list, which in this case is the music teacher, and so you can see what we've done with that schedule for that teacher so far. So in some respects this is just valuable as a visual, but what's maybe more interesting is to be able to look at one of the classroom teachers. And so let me click on this 5th grade teacher, 5B Drew. And so what is here is that there are gray blocks and there are pink blocks in their schedule, but nothing else. It's basically blank. And these are just prompts. They're not actually, it's not actually a schedule of any sort. And the purpose of this is to be able to see when it is that that teacher is responsible for their class in the gray areas, and the pink areas are to represent when it is that they would be free from responsibility for their class. And so these are when the teacher is having their breaks because of the specials that their students are involved in, or down here, this is their lunch. And so what you can do in this case is, if you like and you want to do this sort of thing with these teachers, is you can put in blocks here for their planning period, or for maybe some duty schedule, like maybe they have bus duty or something at lunch or whatever, that's apart from their duties for taking care of their normal class. And so that can be useful. It makes a separate schedule altogether just for the teacher in that way, that you can use to demonstrate that they're getting their planning times or whatever it is that you need to do. And again, it's the same sort of plan. You know, I can put in you know, a start time of say 9 o'clock in this teacher's case. Let's do that. There's a 9, and let's put in 30 minutes and the title, and let's call it planning. And we can do that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to match this these pink areas. And so create the blocks. So there's the planning, and that would be something that could then be reported on and demonstrated for that teacher. So that's a useful purpose for this for classroom teachers. Now if we go back to teachers, and we put in one extra one, which I don't know if you noticed earlier, but let's suppose we have this guidance teacher named Smith, and in their case they just have a blank week, and you can put in whatever you want here and use that same pattern of creating blocks and adding those in there for the teachers. So this is really the sum up and the details of how to use the tools within the planning pages on this planning tab. You have a master schedule where most of your work obviously will take place, but you can do beyond that work for each of the classrooms, of the grade level details of core classes or whatever else you want to put on those. And you can also do a planning for those teachers that's individual and sort of separate from that work. So hopefully that will help you make sense and use all of this to good effect for your schedule. So let's talk about reporting and getting the results out of ESSMaker into something you can use and publish and show to others. So that would be on the Reports tab. And so here we have the first thing at the top of the page is the validation checks. And so again, that's repeated here. There's a way to get to that from planning as well. And full details takes us into a page that gives the list of details of what, in this case, for example, we have a red problem that some classes are not assigned in this schedule as such as we've done it so far. In fact, 84 of them, so we haven't even started really. We've gotten some of the work done, but there's a lot to do. But at any point, whether we're finished or we're not finished, we can produce reports. And the reports are produced in the form of PDF files. And this form here is what makes those PDF forms happen. And just to go fast, you can hit the toggle button here that just toggles all those on and off, however they are set. Now, what do the checkboxes mean? Well, let's do one at a time. The color gives you the option of having the report be in color or in a black and white. It might be black and white might work better in your printer if that's what you need to do. The master schedule is that main master schedule we've talked about in other chapters. The lunch schedule is put on a page by itself, and then you have grade levels, and I'm going to turn those off so we don't get too off here. But there are grade levels here where you can have a schedule for the whole grade level on one page, or you can, or if you want, that you can also make reports schedules for each individual teacher, and in the classrooms. These are the classroom schedules for individual sections. And so this is the one where you might see their English language arts or other kinds of things like that. Down here further past all those, you would see the section for the special area teachers. And so if all you want to do is print a schedule for the music teacher, you just click that one button and maybe the color button up above and hit go, and that will produce just that one report in that one schedule in the PDF. That's all that would be in the single PDF. If we turn all of these buttons on, then all of them are in the PDF, and that's what we'll do in just a second, and I'll show you that. Here are checkboxes for those teacher schedules that I was talking about, where you could see their planning periods or whatever else you've done for them, or that guidance teacher. So these are all the various kinds of schedules you can create. You check the boxes on what you want. Let's, in this case, just toggle the button and say we want everything in color, and we want everything. So let's see what happens. What this will do is it'll think a little bit. I clicked the get report. It will think a little bit, and it will hand back to your browser a PDF, and you should be able to see this here, and it starts at the top with the master schedule, and obviously you can see that we haven't done much except just the mornings here, but that's okay. You can get the idea of what's happening. So this is that master schedule. It has a timestamp that says when was this created, and the title here for the master schedule. So there it is. And then if I scroll down, here is the lunch schedule, and there is, I guess I'll point out here at the bottom, here's the key for those blocks. So you say KA is Dawson and KB is Clark, and so this is the purpose of putting the names of the classroom teachers in the system. It can have this key at the bottom to say what block goes with what, what teacher name in that regard. Here is grade K, which we haven't done much with, so except for the lunches. Let me go ahead and move down here to find something. Here's the first grade where we did some music, and here's that allocated minutes report I was telling you about that's repeated here in your PDF. So that lumped in with this grade level report, you get the number of sections, the sections, and how much they've spent in each of those subject areas. I'll scroll down here a little bit more quickly. We'll get back to 5th grade where we did some more work. There's 4th grade, and here's 5th grade, and obviously we did some more options here, and so you can see a little more detail in this time report as well. So this makes sense to you if you've been following along in the other chapters. Here's a schedule for just the music teacher. Again, we haven't gotten through into the afternoon yet, but you can see the pattern of the classes and when they do their various things. Here's the phys ed teacher, and here's our art teacher and library. And then beyond that, obviously we haven't done much work, but these are the individual teachers, sections, I should say, and everything's blank here. In fact, I guess those are the teacher schedules. Let me see if I can keep going. So here are the classroom schedules. So there's each section has a schedule, and so that's the sort of thing that's down here. So this makes one large PDF with all these pages in the same document, and you may want that, or you may want to, instead of this with everything in one, you may want to make one that just has the master. Let me toggle this off. You may want to make one that just has the master and the lunch schedule in it, and that's that, and then you make a different one that would have the specialists in it or something like that. Either way, you're free to pick which buttons you click and then get a report for that purpose. So this is the report section, and those PDFs then you can download to your computer, you can email them to people, you can maybe post them on some, if you have some private website or file sharing place, you can put them there. You can print them out and put them in mailboxes in a paper form. But either way, this part of the software means that you can produce the master schedule once, and the logic of this software can pull it apart without any errors being generate all those individual reports, individual schedules for people in your building, so that there's not the transcription problem of making mistakes as you transcribe from a master into a single report. So let's talk about the user profile page and show you what's there. This is a pretty simple page, but there are basically 4 things that can happen here. One of them is payments happen when the time comes due. And in this particular account, this tells me that its premium level renewal is due on December 30th of 2024, and we haven't reached that time at this point, and in fact we're not even close. What will happen is that once you get to within about 30 days of that date, then a button will appear here that you can click and then pay for the next year. This system is not a subscription system which automatically charges you money. We want you to be happy with the software and come back and vote with your payment, and not really try to trick you into paying more than you want. And so that's how the payment part works, and this is where you'll find it on the user profile page when it's time. There is a place here to change your email address. This email address is how you log in to the system, and so if you change that, then you'll use that different email address. The reason for receiving your email address from and putting it in this system is so that you can do a password reset if you forget your password. There's a password reset link that will show up, and that will send this email address a link that then would reset the password. But you can also change your password once you get in to whatever you want it to be. You put the new password and confirm it here and hit save, and that will change your password for logging in. And then the final thing that's on this page is a change nomenclature form. And so by default, the master schedule is called the master schedule, and sections are called sections, and special areas are called special areas. But in your school, you may have different names for these. And so it may make the software easier to use if you change those. And so your sections, the sections are the classes at each grade level, and so maybe you would put the word class here instead. Maybe that makes better sense to you, or the way that you speak in your building. Or for that matter, special area, there are some schools that call those encore classes, or you might put encore here, or maybe you have some other name than even that. But doing that will it could make the software more less friction in your mind as you're reading the various forms and pages. So that's the user profile section, and just some little tools to configure things to suit you and your situation.